Hey everybody, it's Ron from Pick Dawgz. This is Ron's Rundown. We're going to go over the MLB games scheduled for Monday, May 13th, 2024. And if you like what you see, make sure to give this video a big thumbs up and subscribe to our channel. Don't forget to put those baseball picks in the comments section below. And if you're looking for my best bets, you can find those at the premium picks tab at pickdawgz.com. There's also a link in the description. Alrighty, here we go. Here are the games for Monday, Major League Baseball. First up, we see the Toronto Blue Jays taking on the Baltimore Orioles. Jose Barrios and Corbin Burnes are your projected starters. Really, we saw the first bad start of the year for Jose Barrios in that last game against the Phillies. He was pitching really well, 2 earned runs or fewer in all of his starts up until that last game where it was 8 earned runs, 2 home runs, 7 base hits. They only went 3 2/3, and that was a 10-1 Phillies blowout win. Now, I think Barrios will be able to bounce back. The problem is you're facing a tough lineup in the Baltimore Orioles on the road. And you got Corbin Burnes on the other side who, last game wasn't his best, but he's a guy that's going to give you, usually 6 solid innings. Usually a quality start per outing. He's got, last game 6 1/3, 3 runs. It wasn't enough for the win, but it still, kept his team in the ball game. And we know he's a great strikeout pitcher, still one of the best pitchers in the American League. So if Barrios has a little bit of issues early in the start, it might be over for the Blue Jays because this is a strong Orioles lineup. Like I said, they're even a team that can score and rally late into ball games like we saw in that Arizona Diamondbacks series. So for me, while I think Barrios gets back to form, I don't think this is the spot for him. I'm going to go with the Baltimore Orioles on the money line. Next up, the Detroit Tigers taking on the Miami Marlins. We're going to see Sixto Sanchez and Matt Manning as the projected starters. Originally, it was supposed to be Kenta Maeda in this spot for Detroit, but he was just placed on the 15-day IL, so it's going to be Matt Manning, I believe. And to me, the Tigers are minus 165, minus 170 in some books in this spot. I can't get there with Detroit that kind of number. I know the Marlins have been miserable this year, and they obviously losing Luis Arraez to the trade really hurts an offense that was already one of the worst offenses in baseball. But hey, the Marlins, on Sunday it was unfortunate to us because we were on the Phillies, but got to give the Marlins credit for that upset win as a big underdog in that game. They scored 7 runs in that one in a 7-6 victory, and they were down early, 3-0 in the first inning. Looked like another one of those games for Miami where they just, not competitive, but the Marlins rallied, they found the lead, and they won that game in extra innings via the walk-off. Sixto Sanchez, not my favorite option in the starting pitching role right now, but I will say his last game, promising, 4 innings, 2 runs, not miserable, and it was a Marlins win in the end, 12-3. I think Miami, at this kind of price, is worth a shot here, so give me the Marlins on the money line. Next up, the Philadelphia Phillies taking on the New York Mets. We're going to see Christopher Sanchez and Sean Manaea as your starters. So two lefties on the mound in this one. Both pitchers pitching well, both sub-4 ERAs. Manaea's in good form, giving up 3 earned runs or fewer in each of his last 4 starts. The control's a little bit all over the place. The strikeout numbers, same thing. He's not really pitching deep into ball games. All those are, definitely concerns. But, the Mets are 4-0 in his last 4 starts. And like I said, no home runs given up in his last 4 games. Only 1 home run all season. He's keeping the ball on the ground. He's limiting sharp contact. And he's been a solid member of this Mets rotation. Christopher Sanchez, I think, is one of the more underrated pitchers in the National League, and he continues to pitch pretty well for Philadelphia. That last game against the Blue Jays, 7 innings of 1-run ball against a very solid lineup against lefties. Really impressive stuff there. He's given up 2 earned runs or fewer in 4 of his last 5 starts. And the Mets, we know they have struggled quite a bit against lefties recently. We saw Max Fried, 7 no-hit innings against the Mets on Friday or Saturday. And the Braves almost pulled off the no-hitter as a team in that one. Fried had too many pitches to go, for the 8th and 9th inning. But still, the Mets struggles against lefties. They're, in the last 3 weeks, dead last in baseball in team OPS with a 336 OPS. It's only 114 plate appearances, but they are, struggling mightily against southpaws. So at Citi Field, which is considered a pitcher-friendly ballpark, I'm going to go with the under here in Philadelphia, New York. Next up, the Tampa Bay Rays taking on the Boston Red Sox. Zach Eflin and Cutter Crawford are your starters. Zach Eflin, I'm not really loving what I'm seeing. Despite the sub-4 ERA, Eflin, similar to a guy like Bailey Ober that we've talked about, throws a lot of strikes, doesn't really walk a lot of guys, but sometimes can give up a lot of sharp contact because he's missing inside the zone. And we're seeing that with Eflin giving up at least 1 home run each of his last 3 games. And the big concern for me is his strikeout numbers recently. That last game against the White Sox of all teams, only 3 Ks and 7 innings of work. I know the Rays went on to win that game, and it was still 7 innings of 1-run ball, but now you're facing the Red Sox at Fenway Park, a much tougher lineup, a much tougher place, and Cutter Crawford's on the other side, who's been excellent this season for Boston, a sub-2 ERA this year. Sure, he's been better on the road, but still 23 2/3 at home, 5 earned runs, not too bad, about a strikeout per inning. I'm going to go with the Boston Red Sox in this game on the money line. I just think that even if it's a close game late, the Red Sox bullpen, while not as good at Fenway as they've been on the road, much better than this Rays bullpen, which we've seen blow so many leads and get games out of hand like we saw on Sunday against the Yankees. So give me the Red Sox on the money line. Next up, we see the Atlanta Braves hosting the Chicago Cubs. We're going to see Shota Imanaga and Reynaldo Lopez as your projected starters. You could argue two of the top 5 pitchers in the National League to start the year right now. I mean, Imanaga, number 1 in baseball in ERA, 1.08 in terms of pitchers that meet the requirement for the innings. 5-0 record, 43 strikeouts, and 41 2/3 innings. He's been excellent. Reynaldo Lopez, a big surprise for the Braves. 2-1, but with a 1.53 ERA and 35 1/3 innings, 36 strikeouts. He's been even better at Truist Park with a .98 ERA in 18 innings. I think we're going to see a great game here, and I don't love backing teams after traveling from Sunday Night Baseball like the Braves have to do after the game at Citi Field, but to me, I mean, Shota Imanaga has been excellent, but this is a tough matchup against a Braves team that's crushed lefties pretty much since after a little bit of a slow start in the first couple of weeks. They haven't really looked back. I mean, they've been excellent the last couple of weeks, top 10 in both OPS and isolated power. I think, it's going to be a low-scoring game, but I think the Braves do enough here, and I also trust their bullpen a lot more in a matchup like this. So, like I said, don't love the angle with the Braves, traveling after Sunday Night Baseball. Those teams have really struggled the last couple of years, but I like them enough in this spot to take them. Give me the Braves on the money line. Next up, we see the Pittsburgh Pirates taking on the Milwaukee Brewers. Mitch Keller and Colin Ray are your starters. Colin Ray, I do worry about regression going forward. The expected numbers aren't the best. He doesn't really miss a lot of bats, but right now the Brewers are backing him up, both with the bullpen and the lineup. I mean, the Brewers are 4-0 in his last 4 starts. He's personally 3-0 this season. Still got a sub-4 ERA. I don't think he's going to be perfect in this game, nor the rest of the season, but I think he'll be good enough. You got Mitch Keller on the other side, pitched well in that last game, but he's got some struggles on the road. This year, last year, he got the ERA above 5 so far away from PNC Park this year, and it's crazy to say this, but I watched that game against the Angels where Keller threw a complete game, but to me, watching that game, it was the diciest complete game I've ever watched. Keller he still pitched very, very well, but he only had 5 strikeouts in 9 innings. He gave up a home run and 2 other extra base hits and a lot of sharp contact in that one as well. It could have went, it could have went a different direction, honestly, if the defense didn't help him out, if he didn't have that run support early, and he just faced this Brewers lineup back on April 25th. They got to him for 4 runs in 5 innings, 6 base hits, a home run, 2 walks to go with it in a Pirates loss. So I got to go with the Brewers in this one on the money line. Next up, we see the Washington Nationals taking on the Chicago White Sox. Trevor Williams and Chris Flexen are your starters. It's funny, both of these starting pitchers are kind of in the same role right now where they're both veterans that have not always had the most success at the major league level, but they're guys that their teams need them to go out there and give them innings, and that's exactly what they're doing. Williams has been excellent this year in his role. I mean, 4-0 with a sub-2 ERA. He doesn't really pitch more than 5 innings too often. We've seen that the last 3 games, only 5 innings apiece, because he's kind of been back and forth from a starting rotation job and a relieving option for teams when they usually down big or up big in games. You can throw Trevor Williams out there, get you 3-4 innings to get through the bullpen, or get through the rest of the game, and not have to chew through your bullpen. But Williams has been a lot more than that this year, and he's been one of the more profitable pitchers in baseball. Chris Flexen, we know he started in the major leagues, had some issues, went overseas, pitched really well there, came back. His role's kind of been all over the place at the major league level. He's been on a bunch of different teams, but recently, I mean, he's given up 2 earned runs or fewer in each of his last 5 starts, and he's pitching some of his best baseball I've ever seen him pitch. And to me, it's tough to go against either of these guys right now, but I trust the Nationals lineup and bullpen more in this spot, and I do think Williams is still the better option to start this game, so that's why I'm going to side with the Washington Nationals. It wasn't their best series this weekend against the Red Sox, but I think they bounced back here. They're still one of the more profitable teams in Major League Baseball. But, it should be a great matchup. I love this pitching matchup because it's 2 guys that really haven't given up in terms of their game, and it's nice to see them have some success this year. So give me the Nationals in a lean. Next up, the Cleveland Guardians taking on the Texas Rangers. Tanner Bybee and Michael Lorenzen are your starters. I got to go with the Guardians in this one. It was nice to see them bounce back on Sunday. I don't know if I would want to back them in this spot if they didn't get that nice blowout win against the White Sox, because they had a really rough series against Chicago. We know the White Sox have been one of the worst teams in baseball. The Guardians have been one of the more profitable teams. So to see them really struggle, both offensively and pitching-wise, was a surprise. But they got right back to business with the win on Sunday, shutout victory. Bybee, he's been a little bit all over the place recently, but he is facing a Rangers lineup that's coming off the Coors Field series in Colorado. They don't get any days off. We know that those lineups have really struggled. I mean, the most recent example, San Francisco played against the Rockies this past week. Then they went back home to Oracle Park to host the Reds this weekend. In that first game, they only scored 2 runs in a loss. The Rangers' offense really wasn't great at Coors Field anyway, I mean, in that series. So I am a little bit worried about that offense. I don't love Lorenzen at starting pitcher. He's got that 4.66 ERA. I think Cleveland gets to him. And Stephen Kwan's a big missing piece in this lineup for Cleveland, and it's starting to show. But I think the Guardians have enough here, especially with the bullpen. I think they have a big advantage in the bullpen in this series. So give me the Guardians on the money line. Next up, we see the Houston Astros taking on the Oakland Athletics. We're going to see Ross Stripling and Spencer Arrighetti as your starters. Both starting pitchers really struggled in their last games. They kind of took their teams right out of the ball game early in that one. I mean, Stripling, his defense didn't do him any favors, but still, 11 total runs, 5 of them were earned, a home run, and a 15-8 loss. And honestly, the final score doesn't really tell the full story because it was a lot uglier than that because it was just so early on. 10 runs, 11 runs. But on the other side, Arrighetti, he gave up some sharp contact home runs early on. 3 home runs by the end of the start, 5 earned runs, and a 9-4 loss. So, both starting pitchers looking to bounce back. I think Arrighetti has the better chance of doing so because I do think he's a better starting pitcher in general, but I also think he has a much easier matchup. I mean, the Astros, while they've struggled this year with that, record 15-25, it's not really been because of the offense. It's been because of the pitching staff. But I will say they've had some pretty solid performances recently. I mean, this weekend, other than Christian Javier, the pitchers for Houston pitched well. And it was a nice bounce-back start for Justin Verlander. And they're still scoring runs, 9 runs on Sunday. I think they get to Ross Stripling and the A's bullpen. This is a big series for Houston. If you're at home playing against the A's, you got to take advantage of these games. Even though Oakland's been, a sneaky, decent team this year, I still think the Astros are the much better team. So give me Houston laying the 1.5 runs. Next up, we see the St. Louis Cardinals taking on the Los Angeles Angels. Matthew Liberatore and Jose Soriano are your starters. I'm going to go with the Angels in the first 5 innings. I do think St. Louis has the bullpen advantage in this series, but I think Soriano is the better starting pitching option. He is somebody that struggled at Angel Stadium. He's also someone that when things go a little bit wrong, he has the issue of unraveling. We saw that in the last game against the Pirates where he was dominant through the first 4 innings. Then he had some trouble in the 5th inning, and he couldn't get out of the jam. And we've seen that a few times this year from Soriano, like the game against the Cincinnati Reds. But I still think Soriano, the velocity on his fastball and sinker, excellent. The knuckle curve is nasty. He could keep the ball on the ground. He's got great strikeout stuff as well. I think he's going to be a really good option in this Angels rotation. I think he pitches well against the Cardinals team that we know has been one of the worst offenses in baseball all season long. And Liberatore's pitched well, but not really. He hasn't really pitched much in the starting pitching role recently, and he doesn't really pitch deep into ball games. And he might go deeper into this one, but I just don't really love the second time around the order, especially in the late 3rd inning, 4th and 5th innings. I think that the Angels will be able to get to him. So I'm going to go with the Los Angeles Angels in the first 5 innings. Next up, we see the Cincinnati Reds taking on the Arizona Diamondbacks. We're going to see Graham Ashcraft and Jordan Montgomery. So the same exact pitching matchup last week. It was a 4-3 Diamondbacks win, and it was a pretty low-scoring game. I expect a low-scoring game here, even though it's not easy facing the same pitcher. It's not easy for the starting pitchers to face the same lineup twice in the same week. Both pitchers pitched well. Montgomery facing a Reds lineup that we know has struggled mightily against lefties really all season, but especially in the last month or so. They were able to get to Kyle Harrison for a few runs early on Sunday against San Francisco, but it was also kind of a perfect storm of an inning in the first inning where there was an error and a walk and a big hit by Jeimer Candelario and with the bases loaded. But other than that, Harrison pitched pretty well, and Montgomery, like I said, pitched excellent against Cincinnati back on May 8th. Graham Ashcraft, while he didn't pitch deep into the ball game, it wasn't his best start, it wasn't his worst, but we got to remember that was at Great American Ballpark, where I don't love backing Graham Ashcraft. I'd much rather take him when he's on the road. So far this season, the home and road splits are definitely noteworthy. 15 2/3 at home. He's got an ERA above 7, 24 innings on the road, an ERA below 2. So he's just been much sharper away from Great American, which is a very hitter-friendly ballpark. I like the under in this Reds-Diamondbacks ballgame. Next up, we see the Colorado Rockies taking on the San Diego Padres. Cal Quantrill and Randy Vasquez are your starters. Now, the Rockies are coming off that Coors Field series. They played excellent baseball in the final few games of that homestand, but we know the Rockies are a big fade on the road in most spots, and they're 3-16 on the road so far. Now, sometimes you're getting really great prices with the Rockies. They've been on the road for a few games. They settle in after the altitude difference, and it's definitely worth taking a shot with Colorado, but this is just not one of those opportunities, in my opinion. Quantrill pitched well in that last game, but he's still not my favorite option to back. He still doesn't have great stuff, doesn't really miss a lot of bats, and I think the Padres get to him. And Randy Vasquez is also not my favorite option to back, but the Padres are playing much better baseball. I think they have a much better bullpen. And with the Rockies coming off the Coors Field Series and a long homestand with no days off in between, I expect a really sluggish performance offensively in this game and potentially the first few games of this road trip. So I'm going to go with the San Diego Padres and lay the 1.5 runs. Next up, we see the Kansas City Royals taking on the Seattle Mariners. Brady Singer and George Kirby are your starters. Now, Brady Singer's pitched really well for Kansas City this year, but I also think he's benefited quite a lot from pitching a majority of his innings at home at Kauffman Stadium, where last year we saw him pitch a lot better at home than he did on the road. And, he's pitched well on the road so far, but only 10 innings of work away from Kauffman with over 35 at home. The walk rate is much higher on the road, and, the opponent's batting average a bit higher as well. I think the Mariners will be able to get to Singer early in this game for a few runs. I also don't think he's going to pitch deep in this ball game. And that's also another concern is this Royals bullpen. While it's pitched pretty well recently, the expected numbers are still some of the worst in the league. And that's where Seattle, I think, has its biggest advantage in this series is the bullpen. And George Kirby, he's been inconsistent this year. That last game against Minnesota was not what you want to see. But I think he bounces back, especially at T-Mobile Park, where we know he's been a lot better. It's a pitcher-friendly ballpark. And so far this year, sub-4 ERA. I like the Mariners in this first game in this series, and I think this could be a good series for Seattle overall. The Royals have just been so-so on the road. They play pretty well in that Angels series, but overall, they're much better at home at Kauffman Stadium. I'm going to go with the Mariners on the money line. And the final game we're going to talk about for the Monday card in Major League Baseball, the Los Angeles Dodgers and the San Francisco Giants. Yoshinobu Yamamoto and Jordan Hicks are your projected starters. Jordan Hicks, similar to a guy like Logan Webb in this Giants rotation, does a great job at keeping the ball on the ground. He's got one of the best ground ball percentages in Major League Baseball in terms of starting pitching right now. The problem is this matchup doesn't really bode well for a ground ball reliant starting pitcher or a pitch to contact guy because the Dodgers have the lowest ground ball percentage in Major League Baseball offensively, and it's not even really close. I mean, they're at 35.7%. The next team is the Seattle Mariners at 40.5%, so almost 5% difference there. We know the Dodgers' very powerful lineup, a lot of fly balls, home runs, line drives, extra base hits, and I think that this is a bad matchup for Jordan Hicks. And with Yamamoto on the other side pitching as well as he has this year, I know the Dodgers were very sluggish with the sticks on Sunday in a shutout loss against San Diego. I think we see them break out, bounce back from that poor performance offensively. I think they get to Jordan Hicks for a few runs. I don't think it's going to get shelled, but I just think it's a bad matchup for him overall. So give me the Los Angeles Dodgers here on the money line and run line. And that's it. Those are the games for Monday. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe. And don't forget to put your baseball picks in the comment section below. Again, if you're looking for my best bets, you can find those at Pickdawgz Premium. As always, this is Romanelli. Good luck.